Okay, this is the audio commentary for episode 6, Glacius the Unerring, on our painting video. Doing a little differently starting from this video and on, where I'm going to have the full uncut version of the paint job so you can see more of the details. Some people had requested that, that's cool. So here we go. One thing out the gate, I did not include the paints on the screen because of the different length of formatting and how it compressed down to the small video, but that's okay, I'll read them out to you as we go. If you've never watched one of these, or if you're not really into painting, you feel free to stick around and watch. And I appreciate you supporting the channel by watching it through the entirety. It really does help with my views on YouTube. Okay, so here we are painting. A quick note, I've used all Citadel paints as before. And we're starting with an Alatoc blue, there we go. I'm filling in the crevices of this base. It's supposed to be an icy platform. I knew I was going to do some more on the top with snow and the dead hobgoblins, so I figured whatever. Probably could have done better basing, but this is Alatoc blue, and now we're going on the top with a techless blue. You can see in the picture it's a little bit lighter, gives a two-tone blue effect, and around we go. I split the painting video into 3 sections: the basing, the hobgoblins, and then ultimately the dragon, so that instead of jumping all around when I was painting, they're sort of out of chronological order, but it makes more sense to watch. Okay, so now what I've done here is, so you can see the finished hobgoblins, they're already painted. I was just testing around. Alright, so now we're putting some ceramite white on the top, so it's, instead of that Vallejo gray primer, it's got a nice white base. When I put the snow on top, I want it to, any particulate that shows through, I want it to be white, not gray. So I'm putting a lot on the brush and I'm getting real close to those edges. I don't mind if it goes off the edge because it won't really spill into it unless I have too much water on my brush. So this way it gets right to the edge and gives nice blue contrast in those cracks. And in some spots it spills in. Well, that's okay too, because real snow would actually spill in. And again, ice is not nearly as forgiving as like the grass and the foresty bases and the lava bases before, but the main thing is to have fun with this. Nobody is the best painter in the world. Everybody is a noob, because every time you paint, you get better than the time you painted before. Now I'm dry brushing. This is some Imric blue. You can see my dry brush. I like to use the side of my finger just to put it on there and wipe it off, and you can see it's pulling up some of the nice details of the sculpt, the lines and the cracks. It actually looks pretty cool. And then I'm just going to bury it all with snow later. I guess that looks like a frozen rocky. Yeah, I kind of regret putting the snow on it, actually, looking at that. But you know what? Again, like I was just saying, you learn every time you do one of these things. Especially when you put them on screen and you're recording yourself, because then you're kind of committing and you can't really change your mind. So this is just regular PVC glue. I have my little glue brush, which was a dollar store brush. I trimmed the brush bristles down to almost nothing so I can use it to push the glue around into various areas. You're just going to want to saturate that with glue for the snow. Here it comes. I like this Army Painter snow. Roll it on there and let it dry. So now we're on to the hobgoblins. This was done earlier than the base, as I mentioned. Now these are actually just regular goblins I had from Reaper Bones. I call them hobgoblins because when you scale them up against the dragon, that they're bigger than goblins would be, and they fit with my story better. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm cutting this guy off the base, and I'm trimming off his legs, because this is guy, and you can see now I'm fitting him. I pre-fit him to make sure he would fit, and he does. He fits perfectly in that dragon's hand. See, he's being held. And then this other guy, he's going to go in the mouth. Now, the problem with this white dragon is he's got a lot of teeth. Now, I couldn't get the goblin in there with relative ease, even though I trimmed off his body and cut off his legs and, you know, cut down his tummy into a V shape, but the teeth were still bothering me. So what I did, and I don't see right there, I cut the teeth out of the dragon's mouth. Okay, give him a toothless dragon. Now with that said, I didn't throw the teeth in the garbage. I kept them, and then after I was done with tweezers, I PVC glued. No, I'm sorry. I glued them back with model glue. You know, like the glue that we use. Can't think what it's called. So this is the dead hobgoblin that's going to be in the snow. I'm using my heater to heat him up and flatten him out, because I want him to lie flat in his feet and his belly kind of, you know, keep him stuck up. So I use the heavy glass and I push down hard on him when he's in melted form, and then I form him with the cold water, and now he's flat. So he lays, see his feet are sideways instead of straight up. This is just me priming with some cheap black primer, because that one guy hadn't been primed yet. So I can't believe I can't think of the name, but whatever type of glue we use to glue these minis together is the glue that I used. I use Gorilla Glue, will work. Gorilla Glue in the gel form, that's what I use. So back to the dragon, I cut his teeth out, I kept them in a tiny little bowl, and then I'll glue them back in later once the goblin is set. So here we are using a Bugman's Glow. Excuse me, here we are. New paints in front of me now to read to you. So the skin for these guys is Bugman's Glow because he didn't want them to be true goblins, even though the models are. Hobgoblins are typically like brown. Here's this one. When we paint, if we have multiple things to paint of the same color, I like to paint them all at the same time. So if I'm doing Bugman's Glow for skin, I'm going to paint all the skin of all 3 goblins before I do more of the other ones, just to be efficient, and my wet palette holds all the paints. Excuse me. And there we are. So this is the guy who's in the mouth. Eventually I'll cut that spear out of his hand. Originally I was going to leave the spear in his hand, but then I decided I wanted to instead put the spear in the dragon. So here's the guy who's going to be flat. I'm going to paint him full 360 degrees, even though I know that 50% of him is going to be glued flat down to the bottom of the base, like of the diorama, but you know, just for consistency. So now that's a Deathclaw brown for the spear handle. It's pretty gross of a spear color. I wouldn't use that if it was if I was just painting the goblins, but I wanted it to stand off from the dragon. If it was too dark of a color, it might not stand out as much when it was stuck in the dragon's wing. Okay, his armor is Warplock Bronze. It's the Citadel base paint. I know I had pictures of hobgoblins in my video. They were all wearing different color of armor, and I never considered that for these because I frankly found those pictures after I painted these guys. But that's okay. So yeah, if you can see here, there's nothing really special about these. These are small, tiny Reaper Bones minis. They look like potato faces because they don't have much detail to them, but they're perfect for this because they're nice and soft and malleable, and they do the trick. So again, Warplock Bronze and all of his stuff, and I'm going to use Lead Belcher for the spear tip and for the shield and for his crotch armor. Same with this guy. There's the Lead Belcher on the spear tip, and Lead Belcher on the spear tip. It's kind of hard to see this. I could have zoomed in better, but as I said, they're just add-ons. So there's Lead Belcher also for his chainmail on the front of his shield. I'm also going to weather these with some technical typhus corrosion. Okay, what is that? That's a Screaming Skull for the cloth bits. You can barely see these when it's all said and done, but again, I like to be I like to take care of it all. We've got some, what is that? Some brown. I know it's a darker Deathclaw brown for his sheath. Again, Screaming Skull for this guy's cloak. His sword is done with the Lead Belcher. The Typhus Corrosion is a technical paint. I didn't include it in the other video, but I put it on these weapons just to make them less pristine, because these are just hobgoblins. I guess they don't have top gear. So to do that guy's diaper, as I call it. Here's the Typhus Corrosion, especially on the shield, on the spear tip. So put that on there. Remember, if you're ever using Typhus Corrosion don't use your good brush. See, this is my chintzy brush as marked with that tape in the middle. I take a shitty brush that's old and garbagey and I tape it around the middle just so that I don't accidentally use it for good stuff. Now this is a wash. This is just a Reichland Flesh shade. I'm just putting all over everything. Highlight some of the contours and darken some of the Bugman's Glow. I put some on the Death Claw Brown of the spear as well. See? Whoop, there it was. Okay. So those little hobgoblins are now done. Pretty much. And they all have their place on the finished model. And I thought that was fun. Because the model alone being white on white on white on white is kind of boring. So I wanted to make it exciting. Even the diorama isn't exciting because there's no trees or plants. It's just blue and white. So that was why I picked these guys for this one. Just to give a little bit of excitement. So onto the model, the dragon itself, Glacius. So the four main colors I used were Wrathbone, Pallid Witch Flesh, Deepkin Flesh, and White Scar. There's a Wrathbone up the back. Now, this is not exact science, guys. I'll be honest. I put that on there, and then I used a little bit. Like you can see my palette there, all the goblin colors. So this is Wrathbone right now. Down his back. I wanted it to be like a creamy look. But I'm going to dry brush that. I'm going to add more white to it and everything. So now we're going on to the other one there. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. Maybe that is Screaming Skull. You know, the exact paints I use don't exactly matter in this case, and next time I'll have a better handle of them because I'll have the tags on the screen. The difference is you can see his wing flesh and these bones on the webbing are a different color than that of his back. Now I'll blend it later with dry brushing, but for now I just don't want, again, monotone. I don't want monochromatic look. So what's this? This is the White Scar. So see, I'm doing the wings with a white scar. Now that's the first like white. And this dragon, by the way, was also primed white with a ceramite white primer. So it's primed white. I'm doing a white scar on the webbing. I've got Wrathbone and Screaming Skull on his back and on his wing bones. I'm not the best at anatomy, so I might say the wrong thing here and again, but that's alright. So here's another color again. This is Pallid Witch Flesh, I think. See, I'm just doing it about halfway up the webbing, trying to wet blend it together. And again, because I filmed the whole thing, I think I actually did the wings twice, the webbing twice. I didn't like the way the wet blend worked, so now I'm on the other side. Let's see, more white scar. Yes. You can see the first wing I did the bones and the meat first, and then I did the webbing. On this wing I did the webbing first, and now I'm doing the muscle and the sinew and the bones second. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out what's best for me. Remember, we're all learning, and every time we paint we learn a little more. These are certainly not going to win any awards, but I also think they're better than tabletop. I think that it's irrelevant what it looks like as long as you're enjoying the time that you're doing when you're painting. So again, Deepkin Flesh on the webbing with a little bit of a wet blend to try and make it less stark. So I'm putting a little more white. Now, of course, see, I'm painting over the bones now that I did them. Now I have to do the underside. It's more of the same under here. And this would also be in one of the previous videos, parts that I would have compacted down to take this 25-minute video down to an 8-minute video or 12-minute video. This time I left it all in there so you can see. But again, what did I say? It was boring to paint. I mean, it's not very exciting. The sculpts are good. He has longer claws at the tips of his wings than the green dragon did, and his fin up at the top of his head is cooler than the gold dragons. But it's got like a shark look to it, like a shark fin. So now I'm going back over because I spilled on when I did the palette, when I did the white scar white on the webbing. So it looks like for this third iteration of a wing, I did the bones first again. Now I'm doing the webbing. and the fourth on the other side. It looks like I've also done the bones first. So it looks like my official recommendation is to do the bones first and then the webbing between the bones, trying not to spill on top of them, because then you have to touch them up. So what do we have here, sir? More white scar. Again, white scar is pretty much just white paint. It's a layer paint as opposed to a base. I don't know what it is with Citadel, but the ceramite white, my ceramite white anyways, the base is very lumpy. I've heard other people say that. I put a ball bearing in it, I tried to shake it up, I added some water. It's lumpy. So white scar layer paint is my preferable go-to. I also have some MSP, which is the Reaper Bones paint line, Master Series paint, MSP. This pure white 09039, oh no, sorry, 09039, yeah, that's right, brain tumor. This Reaper Bones paint comes in the squirt bottle. You can hear it shake, 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 shake. I like to use that because you can just drop it on the palette, but I still like Citadel paints, probably because I started with them and I'm happy with them. Okay, so it looks like I'm doing white on the dragon as well. I think, now that I remember this, even though I primed this dragon with the ceramite white spray paint, it doesn't look very white, does it? You can see me painting this white scar over top of the ceramite white, and the gray is disappearing. So I think I realized, geez, I painted him white thinking he was going to be super white, and he's gray. So now I'm throwing a bunch of white scar over top of the ceramite white. Now layer paints are pretty thin, and I've watered this one down a bit, so some of that ceramite white's going to come through the gray. And you know what, ultimately I love this finished paint job. I think it looks really badass. I think all the colors worked well together, and it's very boring monochromatic, yes, but you can see, and I'll put some of the pictures right here, it worked. Whatever the hell I did, for me anyways, was happy. Of course, I also got paint on my shirt, which you can see in the finished video, but what do you do? Get good. Okay, so we've painted this Chetworth white. Again, I'm running up his tail a little bit, running close to that edge without touching his back scales. And on we go to that's back to our cream shade. You can see I'm putting some of this on the areas now, painting over the white with this wraith bone probably, because I imagine like the hard bony parts I want to be darker than the soft meaty parts. So the jawline rigid, I want to have a good under thing. Okay, this is a contrast paint, apothecary white. Boy, look at me. I really like this contrast paint. I don't usually like the contrast paints, but this one works. See, I'm putting it on his belly and it's making it like gray, but it dries white, and that gray is just the shadow, and it really emphasizes the scale. So I'm putting on the tops of his claws, and way to keep the mini off the camera. Unfortunately, I don't have a monitor hooked up to this as recommended by other painters. I use my cell phone to capture this footage. I might change that if the channel continues to grow and I can invest some equipment into it. Excuse me, but right now, yeah, what do we got here going on? Still apothecary, a white, apothecary, whatever. It's the contrast. I'm putting it on a little bit everywhere, not as thick on some of the other sides, but it's taking that white scar and turning it from the deep white to this gray, which is especially bringing out the little scales. So I'm kind of putting it everywhere. I put it in a bowl just so I could thin it out a little bit everywhere else. I don't want it to be too gloopy. Okay, and there he is. He's all done apothecary white. And let that dry. And make sure you don't leave any pooling up. You don't want to have this big blobby gray section somewhere. That's Phaneresian gray, and it's not dry brushing. Yeah, I guess it is kind of dry brushing, but I mean, it looks pretty wet. Phaneresian gray is what I used for there. Now on his backside, I'm using Terminus Stone. This is definitely dry brushing. Terminus Stone and Longbeard Gray. So I'm already taking that bone kind of color that I already have, and I'm putting stone dry brush on it, just to help blend the two colors together. You can see my hand, I did two. There's the stone and there's the gray, so I also did the Longbeard Gray. I must not have captured it. So now for the highlights around the face, I'm using, again, the white scar on top of that almondy cream color that I used. I'm using white scar to layer and build up some of the areas. See that vein on his neck? I'm going to use white scar to emphasize it, and there's a bunch of little dots around there too, maybe like baby horns or whatever. I'm just going to touch all those with the white scar. Later I'll dry brush those off, and they won't be so stark, because the white is a really cool contrast, but by the same token it is really stark. It's just like, hello, I'm white, and you're like, oh shit, that's white. You can see he has no top teeth, so as I said earlier, I cut them all out. Once I set the goblin in there, I will glue the teeth back in using tweezers because they are small. Okay, so here go his little white dot dot dots and his fin. I didn't actually record me basing this guy by putting all the minis on there. It was a two-handed affair, and I figured you guys would recognize it. Just glued the one into his hand, and I glued one flat down on the base, doused him in snow, and then stuffed one in his mouth, glued it. I used blood for the blood god. I didn't want to go crazy on the blood effect because I don't want it to be gory. I want it to be kind of interesting, not gory. Also, the tips of his wingtips, I used Warp Fiend Gray. Okay, I forgot. I guess I didn't capture that in painting because they're all suddenly dark. Those little claws, his talons, and those tips of his claws, Warp Fiend Gray. Okay, so yeah, no gore. Gore is fun, but it's also very limiting with what you do. So now I'm using my white scar again, just at the side of all that cream and dry brush 2 times, and now I'm putting, just see the sides white, because I didn't want these almond pebbles. I wanted it to like blend from a white. So see, now there's a nice cool white, then onto, and then even in the tops, tried to draw a straight line right up in between those scales on his back. I'm like, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. When it's all said and done, he has a cool white and cream effect. There it goes, see? Blending it together. Now this is a wash. Now this is called Drakenshade Nightshade. No, Drakenhof Nightshade. But it's in a bowl because I watered the hell out of it. You do not want this wash going on and turning this guy blue, or at least I didn't. In my mind, the undersides of his wings would be slightly blue because when he's flying, it kind of camouflages him with the sky, but I didn't want it to be blue. I wanted it to be light blue. So you can see now I'm going over that other color that I did, the Phaneresian Gray, with a bit of this too to help amplify those scales. And also his, like, what I called his knee pads and his elbow pads, the little scales there. You can see I put some of that on there. But again, it's super washed out. I don't want it to pool. I don't want it to have any harsh blue spots wherever possible. And I think that works. It's his top wing now as it's drying. See how just subtly the blue looks? Now I'm going to come back over and do one more round on the top of the wing. Now a little more contrast on the face. He's got these cool crevices. I'm going to fill them up with contrast paint so they dry not dark like a Nuln Oil where it's black, but they dry gray. And I'm getting into the face here. You can see I did his tongue with pink, which is called Emperor's Children. Now here's the battle wound. So I use this drill. I drill a hole in his wing. I cut the spears out of the goblin's hands, and I glued one half in the top, one half in the bottom, just like that. I also used this knife here, and I took a gouge out of his leg and his forearm. Be careful when you're doing this, please. But when you do this effectively, and I painted it with the pink inside to look like meat, and then I added some blood effect later, you're left with a really cool, realistic looking gouge like someone would have when he's hit. Just take a bite out of the model. And then when you see that, how cool that looks. Once the blood goes on, it's going to look even cooler. So now it's time to jam the models in there, reattach his teeth. Here's some of the finished products. You can see one of the things that's kind of hard to notice is the hobgoblin that's face down in the snow, but he's there. That's one of the 3 hobgoblins. The guy in the mouth looks suitably terrified, and the guy in the claw looks like he's going to have a bad afternoon. Anyways, that was 25 minutes of me talking, but if you made it through, I hope some of that helped you. I'm going to get better at doing these commentary videos because I know some of you like them. Anyways, I'm GMA Tank. Please wash your hands and stay safe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.